Hello, all. This is Matt Lute, founder and senior attorney at Atticus Family Law. As you know, I'm a bit of a nerd, and with that comes confidence because you know that we've built our practice on being an authority in Minnesota and Wisconsin family law. We want to make sure to know the statutes, know the case law, and be ready with all the numbers so that we can not only make sure that we're going to do what you need us to do regarding your divorce finances, your custody claims, your child support calculations, everything like that, but also so that we can strike when the circumstance is right, perhaps give you a quick settlement, a quick resolution, because we are the authorities we are. Part of that also trickles over to a bunch of other areas, such as our current pandemic. And so, while you perhaps see these videos, you recognize that there's a confidence, a determination, even a hopefulness. We nonetheless want to push through some of the hard data and recognize where we are and reason to be hopeful in the coming days. This is, of course, New York Times here. And staying away from the big headlines, let's just take a look at this map for a moment. You obviously got the hot spots, the local stuff from the Midwest, being Chicago and Detroit, along with the other parts of the country. When we dig into Minnesota, I want to take a look at some stuff with you here. Let's take first look at St. Louis County. This is where Duluth is. We've got a number of clients in Duluth. And what I want you to note here is the infection rate of people with the COVID-19 virus is 6.5 persons per 100,000. They've only got 13 total cases up there. So they've got about 200,000 people in the county, which results in 16 and a half. Scroll down a little bit here to show you what we're looking at. For statewide, the statewide infection rate is 13 and a half. So almost twice of what Duluth has right now. But as we go down, we're going to just take a peek here at Lyons County. We've got a client in Lyons County. They've only got 3 cases, so their rate looks a little high. We've also got a Waseca County case. They've only got 3 cases. That's good news, especially compared to Olmsted down here, which is Rochester, which of course is Mayo, so their numbers are going to be a little higher. But in the Twin Cities, you're going to see Hennepin County here, 235 cases. They've got an infection rate of 19 per 100,000. That's the highest in the state. Ramsey, where'd you go, Ramsey? Oh, here you go. 12 and a half, so about the state average, which is also about what Dakota County's at, 12.4. Anoka County is up here. They're doing better, only 8.6, but still 30 total infections. Washington County is not particularly good. It's 46 cases, which results in an infection rate of 18.2. That's this, not quite. That's pretty almost on the same level as Minneapolis. Let's take a look over here for Wisconsin. Scroll back up. Of course, we've got the really dense areas and the bad circumstance in Milwaukee, but where our Wisconsin clients are, we've got 6 cases right now with infection rate of 6.8, which is on par with that Duluth number. Of course, Ellsworth is 7 cases, so only 1 more than the Hudson area, but the infection rate tends to be higher because there's fewer people down there. So before we get into some of the other data here, I want to show you something, which is this guy. This was also in the New York Times this morning, and I think that this is fairly interesting. This map shows when people stopped traveling by more than 2 miles. So if in the middle of the month when the first stay-at-home orders or advisories of social distancing were coming out, places like Montana, if they had enough food stores in the basement and they apparently didn't have any prescriptions they needed, they were able to just start staying at home right away. You see all these dark green parts of the country. Light green parts, this is especially relevant here to the really southern parts of Minnesota. A lot of people were able to get their act together a couple weeks ago in that area. The yellow, that's almost most of Wisconsin. So 5 days later, they were able to really start shutting down. And of course, Wisconsin had the governor's orders started really coming into place and so on. But really, it wasn't until just about a week ago that people really stopped going more than 2 miles, which is the idea of like your grocery, your pharmacy, hopefully within 2 miles. But the vast majority of the Twin Cities metro didn't do that until just a week ago, which then, when we go back to this map, starts explaining why it's so densely bad. It's not just because that's where the population density is, but in bit because the stay-at-home prerogatives and the social distancing directives weren't nearly as respected in the metro area as compared to other parts of the state, which were spared that. Um, and so we see some of the consequences of not staying at home um, in that data. Now let's get down here to this interesting thing, this gradients of orange. The darkest orange shows where the fastest case growth was. Of course, statewide, really bad here in the middle of March, middle to third week of March. Hennepin County, kind of about the same here. But what's really interesting is the gradients. As we go along on these time frames, so from middle to March, the growth of the case growth rate started dropping off here about the third week of March. And as we got towards the end of March, it dropped down even more slower. And when we look at Hennepin County here, not only did the growth rate only last for these 3 days at the highest, fastest rate, but here it started going down to this near slow, and then here it's at the slowest level. Also, Ramsey got down here into near slow. Dakota got down here near slow. Washington started really bad, so it makes sense that they're still in the near fast. But that is that. I'd show you Wisconsin, but they don't give us that sort of data for the near counties. They only give us 7 or 8 of these. And so if you think about the advisories and the manner in which Governor Walz, the schools closing, Governor Walz advising against it, shutting down gyms and bars and restaurants, and then most recently with the stay-at-home order that came into place right about here, you could see these numbers working as more people shelter at home, only go out for groceries, prescriptions, essential medical care, and essential workers are going to the office, and then otherwise a lot of people are encouraged to work from home. You get to see this. And of course, Wisconsin numbers are pushing better as well. So that brings me to this, which is the growth rate. This is new cases reported by the day in the state of Minnesota. Here's the end of February. You know, March began about here. March ended about here. And this gets to go one of two ways. You've heard about the curve, right? We know that the curve can be one of two things. The curve could go up and up and up, and, you know, as it relates to the state of Minnesota, could keep going up and be up like this. Let's show that. Up. And it could be really bad, and who knows when it peaks or comes down again. But this would be horrible, right? The alternative in flattening the curve could be something much more moderate. Maybe where we're going like this, and it starts going down. Without as much social distancing, without staying at home, without sheltering in place, it very well could look like this. With more of it, it looks like this. This is less sick people, less job loss, less attending to sick family members, less paranoia, less worry, less stress, less uncertainty. All of these advantages of a flatter curve compared to, I'm not even going to tell you the horrors of that. We're all living with that grief and that crisis. And we all wake up in the middle of the night with concerns about what's happening to our people and our tribes, you know, not just our family, but our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, the people that we would miss if something were to happen to them. So with that, I bring you back to this. There's reason to be confident. There's reason to be hopeful. We see the effect that that is having, in as much as people were not treating it seriously, and you had some major outbreaks in certain counties, like we saw in the Twin Cities Metro. We're also seeing how the numbers are improving and we're flattening the curve. And if we continue to stay at home and we continue to um, insulate ourselves and do the social distancing, and we don't try to get antsy when they extend the shelter at home beyond April 10th, which I expect they will, we're going to be ready for it, because psychologically we need to be ready, and we can do this when we're psychologically prepared. And while this is a nice curve here, these windmills remind me of Wisconsin, but certainly this is probably not in Wisconsin. But we can flatten this curve and get to the point where once we get past this pandemic, we can start thinking again of getting to Florida or California or wherever you like to vacation and seeing these curves as opposed to these godforsaken curves. So with that, I hope this video finds you well. I hope your people are safe. I hope your people are healthy. And if you have any questions, any further needs, you know where to find us. This is Matt Lute with Atticus Family Law, helping you protect yourselves, your families, and your futures.